We have a tap and it's flowing, and we have obesity and diabetes and heart disease, and more patients are coming through our doors. And within the traditional healthcare system, with all of our knowledge and intelligence and diligence, really, we're mopping up the floor and we're
There's only
doing an
so much you
excellent
can do,
job.
right? At a late stage, there's only so much you can do.
We have very advanced mops, we have robotic mops, we have excellent ways that we can deal with the acute issue and that we can fix things in some way, but no one's turning off that tap.
Welcome to the Health Beats podcast, brought to you by the inaugural Abu Dhabi Global Healthcare Week. The Health Beats podcast series is your window into healthcare industry news making headlines and the role of Abu Dhabi and the UAE in unlocking global healthcare momentum. We're giving you an insight on the future of global healthcare and Abu Dhabi's contribution to it. I'm your host, Lara Setrakian, and in this week's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Nicole Sirotin, CEO of the Institute for Healthier Living. And we're having a conversation today that's entitled Precision Lifestyle Medicine, Shaping Longevity's Future. Dr. Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Laura. I'm very happy to be here.
So tell us about precision lifestyle medicine and how it's different from medicine as we know it.
Precision lifestyle medicine to me is the next era of medicine. We know an enormous amount about biology at this point, and we have ways to test that in individuals. So we can understand your genetics, your proteins, your metabolites, your environment, the way that you live your life, or what we call lifestyle. And we also have a body of evidence to help us guide you on lifestyle changes. So how your food, your exercise, your sleep, your stress, your social connections actually can improve your health. And precision lifestyle medicine is just a combination of these things. So how do we understand you as a human better, and then combine that with evidence and lifestyle for a longer life and a healthier life?
And this is very specific stuff. What specific foods, what specific exercise? I mean, we all gotten advice. We've read the articles and books, but how is this going to change our lives?
So it's a really good question. I think that we're in an era now where we can match your biology with more specific and more, let's say, personalized recommendations. At the same time, there are also still very general principles that apply to everyone, except how do we get you to incorporate those into your life is also an area of science. So, for example, we all know that eating more fiber is helpful. We know that fiber lowers your cholesterol, it lowers your risk of colon cancer, it helps with many different parts of your metabolism. And yet, how do you do that? What kind of fiber foods do you like? How do we help you change your diet to include more fiber in a way that works for you? Now, that's one example of one that just everyone should do. But there are other examples about how your body responds to glucose. What is it that works for your particular genetic makeup and also your environment, your own microbiome? These are the ways in which we're going to lead into the next era.
How do you approach it at the Institute for Healthier Living in Abu Dhabi? What's different for the region and potentially globally about how you are tackling this opportunity?
Our philosophy is that we need to understand more about the biology and the environment and how all of these interact. And at the same time, we have enough information that we can help provide this for patients now. So I think the way that we're doing this is novel in the sense that we have a clinic. We'll have an open clinic. People can come in and see a physician, see a multidisciplinary team, including health coaches and other members. And at the same time, we have a research arm that is really guided to help come out with a blueprint of what is a clinically and cost-effective risk prediction tool and a clinically and cost-effective intervention that we hope will be able to scale beyond Abu Dhabi and beyond the UAE. This is a problem all over the world. We understand that there's a high burden of disease, and at the same time, there are these amazing technologies that have come in to help us understand your risk. And so when I talk to patients about what their risk is, many people don't know beyond their family history, beyond what we've already diagnosed them with. And what we're hoping to do is to move that process back further to understand what are those small hints, what are those patterns that we can see that show that actually you are at risk for this, let's say diabetes, let's say heart disease in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, and then really intervene in a way that helps you personally. So we will take people through a very detailed plan, again, focused on their own life. Everything at the end of the day has to be sustainable. It has to be enjoyable. It has to be something that we can incorporate and continue with as humans. And so we're really hoping to take that information on a person, help them understand their risk, and then really guide them in a personalized way to help them achieve those goals.
It sounds wonderful. I mean, rather than just getting bad news that some bad medical event, to actually be able to prevent it. You've worked in many contexts. You were at Weill Cornell Medical College, Albert Einstein College of Medicine. We're sort of two New Yorkers on the other side of the world talking about something that's a global issue, aging populations. But this is something everyone will want to do. How far are we from this being accessible and this being the norm? Also, I have to say, I was really impressed that one of your past titles was actually a chair of preventive medicine. We don't hear that a lot. So how does this shift happen?
I think that this is really important question, and part of why I think we're at a new era in medicine is because there are many people who have been in the traditional healthcare setting. My training at UCSF, I was, as you said, at Weill Cornell, and then for the last 10 years as a department chair at Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi. And this really is where we take all of that knowledge about traditional medicine and our current healthcare system, which is more advanced than ever. We have the ability to take care of complex patients in a way we never have been able to do before. And that is all extremely important. But the way that I think about this, we have a tap and it's flowing, and we have obesity and diabetes and heart disease, and more patients are coming through our doors. And within the traditional healthcare system, with all of our knowledge and intelligence and diligence, really, we're mopping up the floor. And we're
There's only
doing an
so much you
excellent
can do,
job.
right? At a late stage, there's only so much you can do.
We have very advanced mops, we have robotic mops, we have excellent ways that we can deal with the acute issue and that we can fix things in some way, but no one's turning off that tap. And so that tap is just continuing to flow. And I think this is where those of us in medicine, in science, can see that we are actually at the edge of that right now. We're really understanding much more about the hallmarks of aging, the hallmarks of chronic disease. And I think the reason we will be successful here is because we take people within the traditional healthcare system. We have the rigor of science and clinical trials to be able to bring in this new type of medicine and a new thinking about what is health. What does health look like? How can we be all aligned to get ourselves to that point? So we're not just fixing things after they've been broken, but we really can catch the disease earlier or catch the process earlier to help redirect people.
So increasing lifespan and health span, as you've often talked about. How does precision medicine do this? How does AI do this? How does tech make this possible in a variety of disease areas?
This to me is the game changer for us. So we have this ability now to take in more information than we have before. So for example, we have 6 million base pairs. We can pull that in. We can pull in proteins, metabolites. We can pull in environmental exposures, all of the organisms that live inside us. And we can use machine learning to help identify patterns there. And that's not something that we were able to do before. And so this gives us an amazing ability to really understand the way that the human body is interacting with the environment and how that translates either into a state of health or a state of disease in a much simpler way.
So patterns
Now,
that might show that you'd be likely to develop XYZ or yeah.
absolutely. The other areas that this is, we have AI drug discovery, so we can shrink the amount of time that it takes us to do a clinical trial. Aging trials take a long time, right? We can't wait for for 50 years for humans to age in order for us to understand, is this compound or is this intervention going to work? And
For
so
this person as well, we've been
yeah,
hearing that.
exactly. So we
Yeah.
have these abilities to now speed up that process. So that's another area that's exciting. And I think precision medicine is something that when we think about certain areas where we've really done well. So there's been a promise, let's say, of precision medicine for a long time. And the reality is a lot of that hasn't panned out. We still treat people based on large clinical trials that have a general population, and we apply it then to the individual human in front of us. But when we look at cancer treatment has been absolutely revolutionized by understanding a tumor and how the tumor is acting in the body. And so we have been able to really move the needle in a way that we haven't before, looking at specific cancers, not all cancers yet, right? But specific cancers to the point where, for example, with melanoma, we now have the ability to have a more targeted therapy for that specific tumor, which has radically improved life expectancy for people with melanoma. I think that this is happening now in many different areas. Along the same lines, we have ways that we can do early detection in a different way. So we have now multi-cancer early detection tests that can look at many different kinds of cancers at the beginning, and all they're detecting are very tiny shreds of DNA that are circulating in our body that are representative of extremely early cancers. And so these are the kinds of technologies that will allow us to be more precise in our understanding of where someone is at in that spectrum of health versus disease, and then also to more carefully target those therapies for people who need them.
And are there certain disease areas, you've mentioned different types of cancers, we have more data to use, whether it's diabetes, which we heard about in an earlier episode of this podcast, Alzheimer's, are there certain fields where the science is just further ahead, and so the opportunity to stem the onset of these diseases will be better served or more quickly served by precision medicine?
Yeah, I think cancer is definitely one of them. I mean, we have an enormous burden of cancer globally. We're now seeing a shift towards younger and younger cancer. In the UAE, we have 45% of all cancers are diagnosed under age 50, which is a really remarkable statistic. And I think that what we're seeing as likely causes for this are a combination of the genetics, the environment, even changes in the microbiome. We know that obesity is a risk factor for cancer, and that the inflammation that comes from obesity is makes our immune system dysfunctional in fighting off cancer. And so I really believe that cancer is one of the areas, and not just early detection, but really getting the immune system to be more in tune to help fight off the very early processes of cellular change that turn into cancer. So I think that cancer is one of them, 100%. At the same time, we have ways that we can prevent 90% of diabetes right now with just basic lifestyle intervention. So a diet, exercise, and sleep program that really are not radical. We know in large population studies, we can prevent 90% of diabetes and up to 80% of all heart disease. And so part of what I think the next phase is not just applying new technologies to understand someone's risk, but actually using the evidence we have in a way that the health system supports it. We have to be able to take people through change where they can understand and empower themselves. People have amazing power in their choices. And if we help educate and empower them in how they approach that for a way that helps improve their health, then I think we can help move them in that direction.
So the
I'll give you one
data, yeah,
example.
good.
Yeah. People with very high risk of heart disease. So there's a New England Journal study that came out looking at patients who had extremely high genetic risk. So this means that they might have familial hyperlipidemia or other genes that make their cholesterol very high. They have risks for arrhythmias. This group of patients, you could say, oh, well, I have this high gene risk. I'm just going to get this disease. But actually, if those folks lived a healthy lifestyle, they had a 50% reduced risk of actually developing heart disease. So even at a very high burden of genetic risk, you can help prevent that disease for yourself without any medications or any intervention.
So the data science, the medicine, and the coaching, the lifestyle coaching, is that the chain?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If
A
we
lot of
think
data,
about,
data, data,
yeah,
data.
data,
Yeah.
data, data,
There's
what do we
yeah.
do right now with our lives? Think about the way that you work. Think about the way you make other choices. Anyone who's choosing a vacation, what do? They do their research. They get a lot of information about something to help inform that choice. And so I think we need to have the same approach with our health. And we now have the ability to put more of that into people's hands and to do that in a way that's easily digestible, that makes them understand their choices better. And really, again, this is about empowerment. This is about how you choose to live your life.
And we know a lot more about behavior change than we used to as well. So there's more data.
Absolutely. So there's an extremely sophisticated science in micro habits and how we change that and bringing in digital solutions to help us with this. We can see that human beings are pretty malleable. We can actually, we have this great ability to change. And we also have a great ability to respond and react to information that's in front of us. This is why we have an evolutionary advantage in the earth, right? Because we can take in pieces of information about our environment and we change. And so I think that this is where we have to help people use that to their advantage and really help them understand which tools will be useful for them. They won't all be useful for everyone, but this is an area that we're hoping to really explore here in Abu Dhabi.
We've heard about precision diagnostics. You've mentioned a little bit about how they reveal risks. There's this concept of biological age. How key is that here? Is that just a sort of a, a catchphrase, or is there really something about understanding your biological age and customizing care to that?
So this area is one that is rapidly developing. It will be extremely essential for us as we develop more interventions that help improve health span and longevity. We need to understand how our body is aging. And at this point, we have really this landmark work by Proner looking at the hallmarks of aging. So we can pick out all of the different cellular mechanisms that are changing in order for us to age. The the question is, how will we use this in our real lives? If you come in and say, okay, you're 10 years older than your biological age, how will that motivate people? How will we treat that person differently with maybe supplements or medication? This is really the question. Right now, we do not have a universal aging clock. This is an active area of scientific endeavor. There's a group in the National University of Singapore led by Andrea Meyer, who's doing fantastic work on this, really trying to identify the aging, the epigenetic clocks. So that means you have your genes and you have your environment, and your genes turn off and on based on things you do. And these clocks help identify those changes in the gene expression that either help make you younger or older. The other exciting thing about the clocks that's developing right now is that we have our organs age at different rates. And so if someone were to come in and tell you, you know what, Lara, your liver age looks younger than your stated age, but actually your brain age is a little bit older. What would you do with that information? You say, okay, wow, let's focus on my brain and let's make my brain younger, right? And so what this does is it also helps us guide therapies and think about, okay, where do we put our energy? Where do we actually focus someone's therapies to help improve the area that their body is affected the most. And this is an active area of investigation by many scientists around the world. And I think we're getting closer and closer to understanding how we use this in clinical practice.
I have to be honest, it makes me want to run to Abu Dhabi and get a checkup at the Institute for Healthier Living. But the truth is that's not accessible to everybody. What is it going to take to make this mainstream? What are the barriers to making this mainstream around the world?
I'm so glad you asked this question. So one of my my strong ethos in medicine is around health equity, and something that I've done a lot of work on and cared a lot about for many years. So The challenge here is that right now, everything we're talking about is most everything we're talking about is not covered by insurance. And so healthcare has an insurance model, aging clocks, proteomics, even getting a lot of your gene testing done. This is not yet covered widely for people. And so at this point, this sits into the realm of self-pay. People who have money can come in, they can get this test done, they can do many things to help themselves be healthier. And so part of that question of equity really comes into the payer. And I think governments really need to understand the science around how they can identify risk better for their population, and then also use this information to help make them healthier, live longer, more productive lives. And once we can shift that into the public sphere of really governments wanting to do it, that this is where I think we're going to make headway. And I really applaud the Abu Dhabi government in their own vision for this. This is something that the UAE, I think, will lead the region and the world on, in really trying to understand how do we take our population and make them healthier and help them live longer in a way that will help the majority. There's also a real movement right now trying to get academic medical practices into the field of longevity. Why? Because it's in the best interests of everyone if we can help make this something that is part of your yearly checkup. And I think that's really the goal of how do we get the science to the point where we can use it to help people redirect their health and really think about that yearly checkup in a different way. And then also getting the governments to back it, getting the payers to understand that it's in their best interest to help keep people healthy. And all of those pieces in place will help make this a more equitable process.
It's going to
The
be
only other
easier.
thing,
Yeah.
sorry,
Go
well,
ahead,
the only
please.
other thing I want to say about equity, which I think is
Yeah.
really important, is around AI, right? Because AI is not magic, right? AI has to be trained on real world data. And our real world data is biased, right? So we know that there's racial and gender biases in all sorts of our data sets. Even if you look at the UAE population, Gulf Arabs are not widely represented in science, and they're not widely represented in a lot of these large trials. And so thinking about more representation for populations that need to be studied is really important. And also that we're not using AI just to perpetuate the biases that we know are already in our system. And I think this is an active area that needs global attention to ensure that we get that equity goal.
So if it's really precision medicine, it should know underrepresented populations as well as any other.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, when you were talking about incentivizing or at least getting insurers and governments on board to move more into preventive mode and data-driven preventive mode, it's going to be easier in some countries than in others, to say the least. It is certainly something that the UAE is way out front, it seems, compared to other systems. Is it a conversation you're sensing is beginning to happen in places like the US or places with the legacy systems where it seems like the incentive is actually to treat people once they're sick rather than to prevent them from getting sick? Where's the shift? Is there a
Yeah,
shift?
so I don't think that we're there yet. I think that the places where the conversation is moving the most is in countries that have socialized care, because, of course, when the government takes responsibility for the health of its people, like the UAE, like certain European countries, they have an incentive to keep those people healthy, right? And the economic incentive and the health incentive are then merged. And this is where the key is in systems like the US, where the insurance is still widely employer based and people change jobs, there really isn't a financial incentive to actually keep people healthy, except in closed systems, let's say like the VA or Kaiser or Geisinger. Those closed systems are really doing it. So I will give you one example of where this works very well in the US, which is at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. And Dr. Mike Roizen, who is the chief wellness officer, the prior chief wellness officer, really designed a program for their employees because they have a closed system. And what they were able to do, meaning closed system that they self-insure. So if you're a Cleveland Clinic employee, Cleveland Clinic pays for your insurance, and they actually want you to be healthy because you're cheaper if you're healthy, right? And what they did is they incentivized employees to be part of a health program. meaning they gave them lower rates on their premiums to keep themselves healthy. And they were looking at blood pressure, weight, cholesterol, very basic measurements. And what they were able to show is that they could save almost 250 million US dollars on these programs because the patients themselves are incentivized to do it.
Over how
Right?
long? Over the life
Over
of their
this is
entire community?
year on year, they're
Yeah,
saving the
wow,
system
geez.
money, right?
Okay.
Why? Because those people are not actually then going on to get sick and costing the hospital money. At the same time, obviously, the individuals are better off. They feel healthier, they feel better. They're quitting smoking, they're losing
More
weight. And
productive.
so, this kind of financial mirroring and really merging the financial incentives with the health incentives are really the solution that are at hand in systems like that. I think here in the UAE, we have this extremely opportune moment in time to be able to look at the health system and think about how do we understand what those risk prediction tools are? How do we understand the interventions and really create that blueprint to help inform the payer, to help inform the government around the best way to do it here in this specific environment?
Cheeky question. What lifestyle changes have you implemented based on your own precision health data?
So, good question. I have been really, I think, someone who's cared about health for a long time, as you can imagine, as a lifestyle medicine physician who's been focused on this for my patients. At the same time, I was really, I think, doing it in ways that most of us do this. I apply general principles. So I decided to put on a CGM. So this is a continuous glucose monitor to look at my own glucose. I don't have diabetes or prediabetes. I don't have a family history of that. But this is something that I really wanted to experience. And so when I used that, so this is an example of something that where you take a precision look at your own biology to see how it is that I'm responding to food, meaning
And
how
just
high
blood
is my
sugar.
glucose?
Well,
Just
yeah.
blood sugar.
Yeah.
How is my blood sugar going up and down according to what I eat, how I move, how I sleep, how I stress? And what I found with that is that one of my habits, which is in my view a very healthy habit, is that I fast once a week. And so once a week for 24 hours, I go without food. I drink lots of water, but I don't eat. And so this is something that I've been doing for years. And what I found was the meal where I break my fast is extremely different from all the other meals of my week. Why? Because my body has been quiet without food. All of a sudden, I give it a big load of food. And so when I wore the CGM, it actually allowed me to see the types of food I choose for that meal really affected the way that my glucose responded for that first meal. And so I shifted. I shifted into a higher fat, higher protein meal for that breaking of the fast. Whereas normally my breakfast is full of fiber, fruit, oats, yogurt, etc. So this really was a difference for me. And I think it's a great example of how you can see information, make a small shift that actually will have long-term impacts.
And for those of us who don't know, why was it so important for you to avoid that spike in blood sugar?
Because we know that the spikes in the blood sugar as it goes up and down, this is when the potential consequences of high glucose matter. And those spikes over time then make your small blood vessels not work as well. It makes your body overreact to the small amounts of glucose that come in. And so this is really what leads to a dysfunction in the system that can lead to prediabetes. So if you have a lot of spikes overall, then as your pancreas, which is the organ that's sensing those, releases insulin. The insulin comes in and takes your blood sugar down to a normal level. But if you're spiking very high, then your pancreas can't quite keep up. And then over time, this makes it so that your blood sugar is higher than normal over a period of time, which leads to prediabetes and diabetes.
What advice do you have for people who want to be proactive about their longevity?
Well, first of all, I think you need to understand yourself. And I don't mean psychologically, although that's really important too. I think you need to understand your own biology, right? So we really need more information about ourselves in order for us to actually make a change. So this is where I think it's important to do testing, both traditional testing for cancer screening, but also really to get more detailed view on your gut, on your microbiome, on your metabolism, and really trying to seek that information out. That's number one. Number two is that there are a lot of things that we can do right now, and really empowering yourself with information about which specific lifestyle interventions are associated with longevity. And really, this is, I think, an area where we're learning more and more. And at the same time, we really have a lot of knowledge right now. So, for example, your circadian rhythm, how it is you wake up in the morning and when you go to sleep, how much sleep you're getting. These are very important factors that are associated with longevity. You want to try to be getting around 7 hours a night of sleep, thinking about how it is that you incorporate your exercise. So strength training is one of my favorite things to talk about with patients, because really the strength training is something that is directly associated with longevity, in addition to the cardiovascular improvement. And then, of course, with your diet, we know that the change in your diet, there was a very nice study that was done in Scandinavia, looking at people who had a pretty typical diet, shifted into a higher fiber, lower animal product diet. This was not a radical shift, but this was really just increasing your fiber, increasing your plants, lowering your animal. And what is that? And what did that do? Is actually showed an increase in life expectancy of up to 8 years, even when you changed at age 60. And so I think the important thing here is that really change matters at any point in your life course. And there was a very nice study that was done looking at 8 different lifestyle factors, that if men and women adopted these 8 different lifestyle factors around age 40, that they could gain up to 24 years.
And is that on your website? Because I really want to read those 8 factors.
So it's not, but I could put it on. These are really, and these are not complicated lifestyle changes, right? These aren't. This is, this is, a lot of this will seem basic to people: not smoking, being physically active, right? Not binge drinking, good sleep hygiene, right? Minimal stress, positive social relationships. I think the key here is, how do we look at our life and say, okay, where am I at in these? Which one of these do I really need to focus on? And I think we underestimate the stress and social connection part. This is extremely important, and we've seen this with things like the blue zones, and really understanding how it is that people live long, healthy, happy lives, right? The social connection part is extremely important. We know that social isolation is associated with higher mortality after someone has a heart attack or a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis. And so, this is really a way in which we can move things. And then, of course, there's some very specific things like strength training, combined with exercise, with aerobic training, can, 2 to 3 times a week, can lower your risk of mortality, right, by up to 40%. So these are very big numbers in my mind for things that seem obvious, but really taking it into our busy lives. How do we incorporate it in a way that actually will do joyfully?
And you win 24 years of life. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Health Beats podcast. For more healthcare industry news, visit the Abu Dhabi Global Healthcare Week newsletter. The link is in our bio. And if you're interested in meeting me and our guests in person, join us at Abu Dhabi Global Healthcare Week. It's taking place May 13th to 15th at ADNEC Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. Thanks for listening. You can like, subscribe, and continue to follow Health Beats by Abu Dhabi Global Healthcare Week for your global healthcare industry digest.